Hey everyone, Pastor Aaron here at Central Lutheran. We are so glad and excited that you are joining us for worship. Today we're in week 2 of a series that we have called Be My Guest. As we continue to enjoy these summer months here in the Midwest, here at Central, we want to take a look at some of the stories of Jesus and how Jesus invited people. Because here's what we believe. Summer is a great time to invite people to join us on the journey as churches. So last week we began this series and we talked about a story Jesus told about a man who threw a big party, and when it was time for that party to happen, there were empty seats. And so he told his servants, I want you to go out and compel anyone and everyone to come and fill those seats. He wouldn't let a single seat go empty. Why? Because Jesus knew that an empty seat is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for someone to have their life transformed by the love of Jesus Christ. Today, there's another story we're looking at. In the Gospel of John, the author tells us that Jesus was traveling with his disciples from Jerusalem to Galilee, and it was the middle of the summer, so it was a hot day. It was about high noon. And then Jesus does something peculiar. He tells his disciples, I want you to go on ahead and get us some lunch. And that's when Jesus goes off all by himself. Now, this seems like a peculiar thing for Jesus to do, to say, I want some time by myself. Unless you think, moms and dads watching, of what it's like to be a parent in the middle of a hot Wisconsin, Midwestern humid day, and your kids are all sweaty and nasty and stinky, and they're hanging all over you. What do, parents? You say, get away from me, kids. Like, go outside, right? Just let me be by myself for a hot second. And I think Jesus just needed some room, some space. And so he tells his disciples, I want you to go on ahead. So Jesus is hanging out by himself. Some alone time. And that's when a Samaritan woman comes. Now Jesus is sitting at this well, and a Samaritan woman approaches him. Again, for the early hearers of the story, there are 2 red flags they would have heard in the story right off the bat. First off, the Samaritan woman. She too was all alone. And in that ancient culture, women never went anywhere alone. It just didn't happen. The second red flag in this story is that this woman was coming to the well by herself in the heat of midday. Now, women in the culture would go to the well early in the morning, before breakfast, in the cool of the day, and they would get as much water as they needed for the whole day. Women did not go to wells in the midday at the hot afternoon. Why? Because it could be dangerous to do that kind of work in that heat. So there are all these red flags at the beginning of the story. And the story goes like this. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Why does she say this? Well, for Jews do not associate with Samaritans. You see, Jesus had all the reason in the world to avoid this woman, to not associate with her, because Jews and Samaritans, they were like arch enemies. Jewish folks and Samaritans avoided each other at all costs. They were sort of like Packer and Viking fans. Whenever I think of the relationship between Samaritan and Jews, I think of my brother and how he detests 2 professional sports teams, the Vikings and the Chicago Cubs. He would say to me, the only thing better than the Brewers and the Packers winning is the Cubs and the Vikings losing. I think that's a little bit about how Samaritans and Jews related to one another. In fact, there's Jewish literature from that time that was written that says things like this. Check it out. He that eats the bread of Samaritans is like to one that eats the flesh of a swine. Like what in the world? I mean, go take that and tweet that or share that on Facebook. Or how about this one? Samaritans came from Shechem. And another Jewish author wrote this, there are 2 nations that my soul detests. The third is not a nation at all. The inhabitants of Mount Seir, the Philistines, and the stupid people living in Shechem. I mean, this paints a picture of the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans. And that is probably why the woman at the well made it so clear. She made it clear that Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Now, here's what I love about this passage. The ancient people who read this originally read it in Greek, and that phrase, for Jews do not associate with Samaritans, they actually heard this, for Jews do not eat from the same plates as Samaritans. That is to say, Jews do not drink from the same cup, the same vessels as Samaritans. Jews don't share the same cafeteria as Samaritans. But what does Jesus do? Do you remember? Jesus asks if he can have a drink of water from her jar. So Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. I imagine this woman was now confused, Jesus, what are you talking about? And so she says, sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw and the well is deep. Where can I get this living water? And Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water that I give them, they will never thirst. Now the woman is intrigued. And she goes on. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I won't go thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Rightfully so. She wants to know, where do I get this water? If this water is really going to quench my thirst so that I don't have to keep coming out here to this well day after day all alone, as someone who's avoiding people, as someone who's obviously out here because I'm an outcast, well, then I want that water, Jesus. As I think about that woman, I think, what are the wells that you and I keep going back to in our own life? I think in some ways we're like that woman, aren't we? I think of you parents. What well do you keep going back to? Sometimes parents, we go back to this well called selflessness, right? We give and we give and we give to our kids and we give to our spouse and we give to work. And we believe that just maybe someday all of that giving and giving will make others happy, which will eventually make us happy. And that's when parents, all we want in that moment is for ourselves. Parents, many of us keep going back to the well of our kids' sports and activities. We pour all of our time, energy, and money into programs and traveling teams and camps, thinking that if our kids can be involved in just one more thing, they'll be on track to play sports after college. We live vicariously through our kids' sports, not realizing how coaches and athletics is dictating our lives rather than our lives dictating our kids' activities. For others, the well we keep going back to is this idea of success and accumulation. You pour all your heart and soul into work. You're climbing the ladder, trying to get that promotion, trying to get that bigger paycheck so you can get that bigger house on the bigger lake with a bigger boat and take that bigger vacation. Still, others of you, the well that you keep going back to is entertainment. After long days at work, your nose to the grindstone. You come home, you plop down on the couch and you numb yourself on social media. You numb yourself binging on Netflix. You numb yourself eating a bag of Doritos and downing a 6-pack of beer, right? That woman at the well, she had her own way of going back to a different sort of well. The story says that Jesus told her, go, call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. And Jesus said, you are right. You have 5 husbands, and the man you are now with is not your husband. You see, the well she kept going back to was relationships. She believed that those relationships would somehow give her purpose and meaning. And yet, there she is at the well all alone, feeling as though she's unlovable. I think what Jesus is saying to us is this: you can go back to that well again and again and again, but you will always be, say it with me, thirsty. He wants to compel us to understand that if we drink the water He gives us, we will never have to go back to that well again. You see, Jesus had no reason to even acknowledge this woman, to even associate with her. He should have written her off, and yet He is offering her an invitation. I wonder, who are the people in our lives that we sort of have this tendency to write off or to not believe our invitation would actually matter much? Who are the people in your life we say, oh, they're too far gone? The people in our life who we say, oh, they're not the sort of people who would come to church. Religion is not their cup of tea. There's absolutely no way you'll find them in a church. He swears like a sailor. She drinks like a fish. They're too busy. That family over there, they're too put together. They don't need church. That family, they're too down and out. Who are the people that we sort of write off? And what I love about this story is that this woman, Jesus should have never, ever acknowledged. Well, he never, ever writes her off. It's like Jesus knew she needed an invitation. It's almost like Jesus has a sort of sixth sense where he knows that there are certain cues in people's life in which they're telling us they're open to an invitation. Jesus knows that there are cues to invite people. In fact, there's a church that I follow that's thrown together a list of the seasons in people's lives when they are uniquely open to an invitation to church. For example, here's one of them. When something is changing in someone's life, they are uniquely open to an invitation. Maybe they got married, or maybe their kids went off to college, off to adulthood, and now they're empty nesters. Maybe they had a baby, or they went through a divorce, or maybe they are new to the community. People are uniquely open to an invitation when something in their life is changing. Another season in a person's life is this, when something is breaking. Now, none of us wants this to happen to anyone, but there are those seasons where there are health concerns, where marriage is on the brink, where there are financial concerns. When something's breaking, people are uniquely open. When the cracks are forming in their life, people are uniquely open to your invitation. Or how about this? When something is missing. You've got that coworker who you can tell just their life isn't full. You've got that neighbor who's expressed they wish they were more connected to a community. They wish they had more friends, or maybe that family member who just isn't happy with their life. Or how about this one? Have you ever had someone come up to you and say, "Hey, I don't have a church"? Folks, that is a clear indication. That's someone slapping you across the head saying, "Hey, invite me to your church." Now, these top three, these are all about other people. But then there's one last one. When something is stirring. When something is stirring in us. When you have that conversation with a friend and you walk away going, you know what? They need something more. You've got that young adult in your life who's struggling, and you know an invitation would make a difference. I mean, call it the Holy Spirit, call it karma, call it whatever you want. People are uniquely open to an invitation during these seasons. Now, I know that you're probably sitting there going, yeah, this invitation stuff is great, but it terrifies me to consider inviting someone to church. I want to say to you, and I get it, I'm a pastor. I mean, if you want to shut someone up on the airplane, sit down and tell them you're a pastor. That'll shut them up for the rest of the flight. But get this. Barna Research did a study, and they interviewed people across America, people who don't attend church. And here's what they found. 51% of people said a personal invitation from a friend or neighbor would be effective in getting them to visit a church. And get this, 55% of people said a personal invitation from a family member would be effective in getting them to church. Over 50% of people said your invitation would make a difference in their life, that you are the best invitation. I love how the story ends. It says, "Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, 'Come and see a man who told me everything I ever did.'" This woman who received so much from Jesus, what happened? She became the one to go out and invite. So as we close today, here's what I want to do. I want to push you a little bit. Again, who are your five? Who are the 5 people in your life who need your invitation? Who are the people that need you to invite them into what could be a transformative experience? Jesus, I think, is begging us. He's saying to us, "I want you to fill my seats, and then I will do the rest." Who are the people that are giving you cues? Those people in your life who something's changing, something's breaking, maybe something's missing. And who in you, something is stirring in you to invite someone? Who are your 5? I dare you. I invite you. Be my guest. I'm pushing you. Who needs your invitation this week? God's grace, God's peace, and God's love be with all of you, and all of God's children said, amen.